Iansan is the brand new 4-star Electro character coming to Genshin Impact for version 5.5. In this video, we're going to go over all of her drip marketing information. We're going to talk about her kit and what she does, and talk about what teams she's going to be best on most likely. Spoiler alert, she actually might be the Bennett replacement we've all been waiting for. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. Tempered in molten stone, gold standard trainer from Keqing. Do you dream of pushing beyond your limits? Do you aspire to unfettered power? Why not take a trip in the Collective of Plenty to attend the pilgrimage Victor's Academy? Under the skilled tutelage of our world-renowned coach, we can help you break free from your weak, feeble self. Many visitors making their first trips to Natlan have received such flyers, and the fitness pedigree— oh my god, it's a novel. And the fitness pedigree of the Collective of Plenty is well known. As such, more than a few curious souls have signed up to unleash their inner strength. However, when they first lay eyes on this world-renowned coach, it's not uncommon for aspiring athletic acolytes to feel cheated and ask for their money back. Such situations fill Iansan with a helpless sense of exasperation. After all, even she has to admit that it's hard to draw connections between her childlike physique and notions of strength and power. For many, it's difficult to imagine how someone so diminutive could guide them to break free from their weak and feeble selves. Whenever this happens, Iansan invites prospective students to name a fitness activity of their choice, challenging them to compete against her. Still smarting from being cheated, it's rare that anyone refuses this opportunity to take out their anger on some fitness equipment. Then, once her erstwhile inductees have exhausted themselves trying to outdo her, Iansan picks up their discarded weights and racks up a dozen or so more sets by herself. How is that even possible? Elemental power? A blessing from the heavens? No, my strength comes from a well-scheduled workout routine, controlled caloric intake, and precise supplemental nutrition. Even after experience defeat in this manner, many trainees still harbor doubts over Coach Iansan's word, but most of them still sign up for her academy all the same. Fitness Academy, pretty cool. Coach Iansan is my idol, the greatest fitness coach in all of Natlan. Everyone tells me I'm naturally talented, but without her guidance, I'd probably have wasted my talents on eating. Don't worry if you're new to exercising. She knows how to tailor her exercises to her students' needs. Oh, would you look at me yabbering away? How about I give you a flyer? Coach just so happens to be recruiting trainees. Name Iansan, title tempered to molten stone, gold standard trainee from Keqing, Vision, Electro, Constellation, Carnotaurus. I guess this is a Carnotaurus. Well, okay. For design, I'm a fan. I like Iansan. I think Iansan is easily my favorite small female character. I think she looks more to me like because Genshin gave Keqing new body proportions for the small characters, and it looks like Iansan has that same sort of taller proportion, and it looks to me more like a character that would be an anime protagonist, like that kid in whatever anime that is super strong and fights or whatever. Iansan looks more like that to me than someone like Klee, who just frankly looks like a baby. So this fits with what I vibe with more. I like this design. Also, broken character with darker skin is Pog. Good to see variety. Iansan is an electro attack buffer. Polearm user, builds attack percent to give flat attack buff. So unlike Bennett, it's not just about base attack, it's also about the attack percent substats you give to Iansan. No circle impact, smaller attack buff than Bennett. Also gives Scroll of Hero of Cinder City artifact set buff, which of course is absolutely huge. No off-field electro app, which is definitely going to be relevant for certain teams, Chevrolet's teams in particular. Requires movement to keep buff uptime. This is kind of weird, and I don't want to explain it too much because there's been newer and updated definitions of what movement is. So obviously when your character is attacking someone like Mualani or Moika, they're literally moving around, and that's keeping the buff uptime. But apparently also switching characters counts as movement. Using your elemental burst counts as movement, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the burst. You need to keep movement to keep the buff going. Very small heals. They're very small. Probably not able to, definitely not able to keep up with Farina, but also probably not able to be your only source of defensive utility. Likely something that will be nice in conjunction with other forms of defensive utility. C2 is the main good constellation, with C4 and C6 also being very good. So unlike Chevrolet, her constellation power is split between C4, C2, C2 and C6. So just getting C2, you should be able to have the majority of the power this character can offer. And I feel like C2, as much as it is extremely annoying, C2 is reasonable. I feel like C6 is unreasonable. C4 is pretty unreasonable. C2 is reasonable to expect someone to get, even though the RNG sucks and a lot of people are going to have a hard time getting C2 Iansan. And that's going to suck, and they really need to switch that. Given what we already have in the game, I feel like C2 is a very generous and acceptable place for Genshin to put the power, aside from obviously C0. I think this just about does it. You guys kind of get what's going on here. All right, so let's talk about Iansan's possible teams. So we're going to put most of the characters in here because I just don't want to deal with that. Supports I'm putting in here, off-field DPSs, you know, just whatever characters that are not doing that. Okay, Nilou, he really wants the Pyro Infusion usually for most of his teams, so you're going to want to go with Bennett. And okay, there's something to say first. Compared to Bennett, overall, depending on constellations, then we'll give a stronger buff to many characters, possibly with better quality of life because you don't need circle impact. Movement requirement is a question mark. Run both. So these are some thoughts, right? When you compare to Bennett, some characters Iansan will give a stronger buff to, possibly with better quality of life. Movement requirement is a question mark. Maybe you can run both. Some units will still prefer Bennett, assuming that you get all of Bennett's uptime from being in the circle. Remember that you can leave Bennett's circle, and like for an entire second, basically, you still get the Bennett buff. Something to keep in mind. Okay, Klee, I don't know. Should be a good teammate. I don't know. Maybe I'll remove Solid. I don't know. One thing to note is that Iansan's scroll will buff the whole teammate, not just the active character. So she'll be giving more of a buff to some off-field DPSs. Granted, Bennett also makes official snapshots, so yeah. Child's still going to prefer the Bennett Shengling. You want Bennett to battery Shengling, so yeah. If you're using Melt Ganyu, then you're probably going to prefer Iansan, and you're either going to prefer Iansan to Shalonen or to Bennett. So it should probably be a best in slot, maybe like this, because we don't know for sure. There's certain characters we can kind of know for sure. Oh, for Keqing, like Iansan will give a really big buff, but is the buff enough to be better than Fischl? I don't know. Zhao, I think it should be a good teammate. Zhao moves a lot, right? So that should work. Hu Tao should be a good teammate. Obviously Hu Tao doesn't benefit as much from attack buff, but well, Hu Tao kind of really wants to buff the Hydro. She really wants Farina, Yelan, Shalonen, but it should still be fine. I don't know. Ooh, if they gave Electro App, this is the thing. If they gave Iansan off-field Electro application, could be insane for Eula. But given this, you still have to run either Raiden or Fischl or both, but it still should be best in slot, right? Yeah. This should still be an upgrade for Eula, even though off-field Electro application would be ideal. A Bennett buff that doesn't follow you, and also like that a Bennett buff that follows you. C4 helps. C4 helps with the movement restriction, by the way. So something to keep in mind. Higher constellation. We're talking about higher constellations for Eula. Ayaka. I don't think that this. I don't know about that. Maybe. We'll go with let's try it. I like to keep these things a bit more surface level because until we test them, like a bit more question-y, because until we actually test everything, we can't know for sure. So many times not every time, but so many characters look like one thing on paper and then they end up being even better or way worse than we thought in actual practice. So let's see. I could see it being great for yoimiya. Totally. Almost definitely should be best in slot for Raiden. So we'll put it up top. But we've got the movement thing. So I don't know. We'll put impossible best in slot for now. Can't react with Geo. So that doesn't work, unfortunately. Oh yeah. He won't buff physical damage. He'd buff cryo damage. I hate it here. I hate it here. Goodbye, Eula. Sorry. I'm gonna consider Yamiko a sub DPS for this. Probably best in slot for Ayato. I don't know. We'll see. He does like reaction damage, but maybe like Moika, Iansan, whatever. And then Iansan can buff both Ayato and Moika, something. Should be good for Dendro DPSs. I haven't seen anyone talk about Dendro stuff, but let's try it. Like, let's try it first. Like, he buffs attack, which Sino and Tainari don't care too much about, but they do care a little bit. And the scroll buff should be really good. You still can't buff... Oh, right. I'm sorry. You can't buff Animo. The scroll buff can't buff Animo because Electro can't react with Animo. You need Animo to react with Electro. When we get an Animo scroll user, that's going to be kind of cool because then you can actually buff Animo characters along with other elements. That's going to be really cool. But you should be able to buff Dendro. Am I crazy? Okay. I can see it being good for Linny. I'm not going to try it, but someone could. The joke is that I don't play Linny anymore. I could see it being best in slot for Risley team. He's kind of moving around as he's doing his thing, you know, maybe that counts. I don't know. Novelette is a no because he's HP scaling. I don't... Yeah, you can't react with Geo. So no good for Geo. Arlecchino, I think we're gonna put here. I mean, you never know. I think it's possible. Well, because you already have Citlali that can give scroll. So you'd probably just prefer Bennett. So we'll try it. This is definitely going to be an upgrade for Clorinde. Clorinde seems to have all the pieces that can make this work with her movement, and she doesn't need off-field electro application, but she really wants that electro resonance for Chevreuse teams. And Iansan will buff Moika a lot in her Moika overload dual DPS team. I'm already getting very competitive clears to other top teams with Clorinde Moika, so Iansan should be a massive buff, honestly. Auroron, like, he basically just provides scroll, and he is holding Elegy on my team, but he's only C2. Iansan should provide a massive upgrade to that team. Similar to how Iansan will be very important for Varessa, she'll also be very, very important for Clorinde, for the best teams. You don't buff, he's an attack buffer, so it doesn't work with Mualani. Should be a big upgrade to Keqing, because right now Bennett is just holding Noblesse, and you've got to run scroll on Moika. So by replacing Bennett with Iansan, you can run scroll on Iansan and then run the DPS set on Moika. So that should really, really help. Yeah, I don't think this will be best in slot for Chaska, because you probably still, well, no, you probably still want to run Pyro, but then you get 3 different types. So maybe Iansan, Citlali, Moika. I mean, I could see it. I could see that being best in slot for sure. For Moika, it's looking like the optimal way to play Moika with Iansan is to replace Shalonen. So you'd use Moika, Iansan, Bennett, Citlali, which makes sense to me. Sort of what I was saying about run both. And I'm thinking that might be Arlecchino's best team as well. So I'm going to put them both. I'll put her here because they kind of have the same best in slot team right now. So if it's best in slot for Moika, it's probably for Arlecchino. And then these characters, it doesn't matter for. So in terms of being a Bennett upgrade, like it sort of just depends. You're trading circle impact for this movement thing. And it really is a question of how much this movement thing ends up mattering. Like when yoimiya is normal attacking, she's losing a bit of, she's like moving a little bit as she's normal attacking. Does that count? When she bursts, she jumps up in the air. I know you don't usually use her burst, but yeah, do Ayato's slashes, they count as movement? You know, you can kind of move around while you charge shot for Ganyu. Is that enough? I'm not sure. We'll have to just test it and see. It also could be because sometimes you do leave Bennett's circle and you lose the buff. So it could be that if some movement does count as keeping Iansan's buff, then even if it's a little bit less good, like with a character that's a little bit less good than Bennett, the fact that you can leave the circle and not lose the buff entirely might mean that Iansan will be more comfortable and better for most people. It does exacerbate the 4-star problem even more. Having to go for a 4-star that's not available in the shop as like a staple meta character is so yikes. But regardless, we do still have Bennett, and you know, now you can run double Bennett or Bennett on each side, and they sort of have different restrictions. It really just depends. Is Iansan going to be annoying to keep the buff up time, or is it going to sort of disappear into the background as a lot of these restrictions often do? That's what remains to be seen in my opinion, and we'll see as the pre-release goes if there are any changes and updates to the kit. There aren't so far. There have been 0 updates to either Varessa and Iansan, so let's wait and see. Let me know your thoughts. Take care. Bye for now.